Hi, everyone. Welcome to You've Got Potential, a podcast about the work and lives of undergraduate researchers. Today, we're doing a bit of a continuation of our episode with Monica by talking about one of her lab mates, Malaika, here. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Malaika. I am a rising senior at Rutgers University. As Eric said, I am Monica's lab partner. So a lot of things that probably she has mentioned in her episode is going to be very similar to what I'm doing because we work for the same project. But yeah, I also go to the Camden campus. So I'm not a New Brunswick student.
So how did you even end up hearing about and joining a project on a complete different campus?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I get that asked a lot too. So I was working in a lab from January to May in 2020. So this was like right when COVID had started happening. We went into quarantine, everything like that. When that had happened, undergrads weren't allowed to do research on campus unless you were a junior or senior. And so I wasn't able to do my research. So I was just kind of like cold emailing a bunch of different professors. And Dr. Barrow is actually one of the professors I had cold emailed. I was like, hey, I don't mind coming to New Brunswick. I see the research that you're doing. I'm totally interested. It turned out, I don't think she ever got that email because she never replied back. But how I got in contact with her was through a conference called Abercams, which is for students who are in the MARC program or RISE and things like that, who are minority students. I actually wasn't in any of those programs. My professor was like, hey, this conference, because it's virtual, we're accepting more people to come because we don't have to pay for people's traveling fees and everything. And I was like, heck yeah, put me on board. And so I ended up going to this conference, and later, because I think it was a week-long conference sometime in November, December. And Dr. Bear had actually sent an email to my professor, who just forwarded it to all of us from Camden who were going to that conference. And she was just like, hey, I'm looking for students to come work in my lab. As soon as I saw that email, I quickly replied back. I was like, yes, I'm open, please take me. And then I did an interview with her, and the rest is history. I think it was kind of meant to be, because it's funny because I did send her an email in the summer of 2020, and she didn't end up seeing it, but I mean, it somehow worked out that I still ended up in her lab. So yeah.
That is literally an awesome story. I remember the first time you told me, and it's very inspiring because it really goes to show your persistence. So, well, we talked about now how you really wanted to work with her, and would you like to tell us then what exactly are you doing within her lab? We mentioned that you do work with Monica, but I'm sure that there's aspects to your project which would be super cool to explore from your perspective.
Yeah, so let's kind of do a timeline of what I've been doing. So I joined Dr. Bear's lab in January. And so from January to May, I was working remotely. So a lot of it was just doing a fun tissue lesion volume analysis, which is basically the things that Monica had done. I would go and I'd calculate the lesion volume using a program. And then I would just input it onto an Excel sheet where we keep all of our data and everything like that. And then I also did measuring of demyelination of where the lesions were. So that was basically what I was doing from January to May. I was also reading in more about the project, more about spinal cord injury and all that stuff. So I wouldn't enter the lab in May being oh, what are we doing? And then in May up until now, so I've been doing a bunch of different things. I remember, Monica probably remembers this too, the first day I came into the lab, it was perfusions week, and we just went straight into perfusions. Tomas, who is our postdoc and mentor, he was just like, all right, you ready for perfusions? I was like, let's go for it. Monica's like, are you sure? And I'm like, let's do it. And I remember seeing perfusions for the first time. I've never seen something like that before. I've never even worked with mice prior to coming to the lab. So it was a really cool experience to see that. I also ended up liking perfusions. It sounds a little, hopefully not psychotic, but it's kind of fun to like do dissections and things like that. I got to see that, and then I also got to see how we extract the spinal cord after the mice are PPU'd, the brains, and then after that, I also got to do some meninge cleaning, which I suck at, but hopefully
It's hard.
it's so hard.
Takes a while.
Yeah, it's really hard. But yeah, I got a little bit of that. And then the vibratome. So the vibratome was something I really did struggle with. I hated it at first, but now I'm just vibing with the vibratome. I'm just slicing and dicing away. I just like listen to my podcast and just like, and it's so funny because it's like I remember people being like, "Oh yeah, like it's hard at first, but like you'll end up liking it." I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever like it, because it was like when you work with the vibratome, you have to put your spinal cord on the gel, and then you have to like close it off with agros. And it's like sometimes when you encase it in agros, it'll like pop out when you're actually doing the vibratome. That was the most frustrating part. Or you'll just have tissue that is like literally breaking apart, and you're like, I don't like, how can I section this? I don't know how to section it. But eventually, with a lot of practice, I got hopefully a little better at it. It's very satisfying though when you like just see the spinal cord just get cut off, and it'll just like lay down on your paintbrush, and you'll just go put it into, you know, your little like dish. And then along with that, we've also been doing like the Mohs recordings. So, you know, just getting the mice, putting them in an open field, doing the recording with, which Monica has mentioned, we use the Xbox camera, which when I had first learned about it, I was like, that is so cool. Yeah, and then I've also been doing data analysis. So we have data from 2020 mice and 2021 mice. And so I have been creating a bunch of different graphs to try to see like what's going on. Is there a correlation between, you know, our BMS average, which is just to like reiterate what BMS is, it's just like the scoring of the mice's walking movement. It's a complex scale. And yeah, using those scores that we have gotten and graphing them, we're trying to see like, all right, is it increasing when there's lesion, when the lesion volume is less, or is it more? And all of that stuff. So that's kind of been what I've been up to. I'm trying to think what else. There's been a lot. I mean, it's been a really fun a couple of months I've been in lab. Like Monica, I was like, I can't believe like it's already been almost August and I've been here since May. I just feel like, you know, it's flying by.
I really wanted to ask you, Malaika, about your prior research experience, because I literally loved hearing your story of like your research involvement and your like wish to be a researcher, and like all the steps of the way to get to where you are now, and like also the fact that you like learned so much in literally just a few months is so impressive. And you want to go to grad school, so like I really want to hype you up. Like you're doing amazing. I think you're cool.
Oh, you're so sweet. No, it's really like I do have to say something. You guys are throwing a lot of like nice comments at me, but it really is at the end of the day that the lab you're in. I've been so fortunate to be in a lab that is super supportive, and I'm like surrounded by amazing people who are always pushing me to be better. Even like Tomas, for instance, our mentor and postdoc we work under, like anytime I have a question, he answers it, and he's like, if you don't understand it, tell me, and like we'll just have conversations to get a better understanding. So people are very supportive, and that's something that, you know, like I encourage everyone to look for when they are searching for labs, to try to find people that, you know, can help you out through your path. Because to be honest, there are days in research where it sucks, and you do need someone to kind of rant with sometimes, or just to get through that process. But yeah, I mean, my story-wise, so as you're just saying, I started in my first lab experience was in a chemistry lab. I did stem cell engineering, which was really cool, but a lot of it was like on paper. So it was a semester, it was like a semester credit for research kind of program. And my PI was like, hey, I want you to come up with a scaffold, which if you don't know what a scaffold is, that's totally okay because I had no idea what it was. It's just basically like, I don't even know if I can really explain it that well, but it's just like a base or a system that can help cells to grow outside the body. And he was like, come up with a ideal scaffold that could be implanted in any patient with any kind of injury. I was like, okay, sounds cool. And so this required a lot of reading of papers, so many different kinds of papers on like cell migration, pore size, different types of scaffold materials that are out there, so many different things. That was a great research experience because that really taught me how to read scientific papers. I still suck at reading scientific papers. It takes me so long to get through them. And I think it only gets better with time and experience, but that was like the first lab I was in and the first chance I was getting to read research papers, get a better understanding, and create a proposal. So at the end of the semester, I had to create a 5-page proposal on how to go about creating this ideal scaffold. And I was like super excited too, because like my idea was to work with like 3D printers and these things called like memory shape polymers, which are super cool. And they basically, when you use memory shape polymers, they can be implanted in the body and they all just adapt to your body's pH environment, the blood flow, the oxygenation, like all of that fun stuff. And I was like, yeah, like I want to try this. It'll give like us a 4D structure because it incorporates time as the fourth dimension. So that change in movement from this memory shape polymer would give that 4D aspect that could be implanted in patients. And so I had this whole like 5-page proposal ready to go. COVID happened, wasn't able to go into the lab. So then that was where I was on my search. I ended up in the mathematics department and I was working on a really big project called Circles. And this project is like a worldwide project. There's so many different institutions working on it. There's UC Berkeley working on it, Temple, Rutgers. There's people from Paris that are like working on it all over the world. It's a really big project. And their idea is on like traffic control. They're actually going in August to Tennessee to go test out some of the things that we were helping out with. So like on that part of the project, I was helping out with like different scenarios, like where should automated vehicles go on a highway? Should they be on the most left side of the road or should they be in the middle? Should they be on the most right side of the road? Kind of like figuring out the logistics of that. So many genius people in that lab. That lab also had like phenomenal people. They were so, so nice. And a fun fact, someone I actually worked with in that lab was in Forbes 30 under 30. So it was really cool that I got to know someone who actually is on Forbes 30 under 30 for, I believe, the year of 2021. Yeah. And then after that, during that actually same time, there's this great course at Rutgers Camden called Principles and Practices of Biological Research that is spearheaded by 2 phenomenal professors. Shout out to Dr. Freed and Dr. Lee. And this course is designed for students who are interested in research. And what it is you basically come up with a research question from scratch and you have to create a proposal, methods, materials, everything on your own. And then throughout the semester, you get to work on this project. So our project was on figuring out the mechanism behind how CBD relieves pain. And as we know, CBD has like popped up everywhere. Like I remember, I don't know, like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, maybe, it like was everywhere in malls, at the store. People are just like CBD relieves this, CBD helps with pain, CBD helps with like epilepsy, things like that. And so we were interested in asking like, how exactly is it working? Because no one knows what the actual mechanism is, what it's binding to, how it's creating this pain relief in people. It's like kind of like this miracle medicine that like no one really knows about. And so we worked with Drosophila, which are also known as fruit flies. And we were lucky we had a great lab partner who actually took all the fruit flies. This was also, again, during the pandemic. So he had all the fruit flies in his apartment. He was breeding them and everything like that. And then the rest of us were like spearheading on the project, like what to do. We created a whole like new way to do thermal pain assay tests, which we use like a water bath assay. So we would have like a dish of just water and we'd boil it, not boil it, we'd put it at a specific temperature where it was hot enough for the fruit flies. And then one of our lab members created this super cool like tray where we could put all the petri dishes in, because we had 6 different petri dishes with like 5 different flies. And we put them in all at the same time, and he created it so we could put it in all at the same time. Because when it comes to science, you know, like every little thing affects your project. Every kind of measure you take will affect your project, will affect your outcome. So we tried to limit as many variables as possible. So that was like a really fun experience because we got to learn how a research project is made from start to finish, even though we didn't exactly get positive results. And it was hard to also like figure out how to administer CBD to fruit flies. Because I think one way that we did it was, I think our lab member had created a system where like you could just like quickly pump it into the tubes, and we had so many different tubes of flies. I don't know how he did it. But like, you know, little things like that, like it was our first time doing it. We didn't really know anyone who was working with CBD and fruit flies. So it was a really great learning experience from learning from our mistakes and just having fun. Like I have really great lab members. So that was a really good experience. And that experience really showed me that, you know, like I want to go to grad school. I want to do something like this. I want to see a project from start to finish. I want to be able to, as cliche as it sounds, be at the forefront of science, making discoveries and finding my own little like, you know, home or niche or, you know, my little area of interest. And then after that experience, during that time too, I was actually working online in Abrera's lab. So I was like, oh, while I was doing tissue lesion analysis. And then in May, I finally got to come to the lab, and I got like that Abrera's lab was the first lab I actually got like hands-on experience. I mean, the project that I worked with CBD with, that was also hands-on experience, but that was with fruit flies. This one, I got to work with mice, and I got to see different aspects of like actual neuroscience research, like working with a vibrotome, doing spinal cord sectioning, as I said, perfusions. Eventually, we'll get into stainings and all of that. But yeah, from these experiences, that helped me guide to better understanding if a PhD is what I want to do.
That's actually like one of the questions that we got from our first time question asker from our audience, Anna, who asked like why PhD. I'm gonna add another layer to that, like why neuroscience PhD?
Yeah, I've always been interested in neuroscience since high school, to be honest. I feel like in high school I became like really serious about career paths. I feel like prior to that I was just like kind of living my life in the present, and then as soon as high school hit, I was like, I kind of start thinking about like what I want to do. I always wanted to be a doctor, as I'm sure every kid had dreamed at one point. And I thought I was gonna go to med school and take the med school route and become like, I don't know, some sort of, I didn't know at the time what kind of doctor I wanted to be. I just knew I wanted to go to med school. And then slowly throughout high school, I was actually getting exposure to research, and that this could also be an option. You could do this as a full-time job, and you know, it's a really cool job. I got to see a lot of different people who were doing cool research. I got to meet someone who was doing research in astronomy at Harvard. I got to see people who were MDs who were doing research in, you know, at an institution, but were also practicing as physicians. So I got a little bit of exposure, and I was like, this is really cool. I took a psych course, and when I learned about neurons, I was like, wow, this is like, I caught the neuroscience bug, and I was like, this is something I want to do. And I did some research on my own as well, and just seeing how, I think what really attracted me to neuroscience is the fact that we just know so little about the brain. And like, it's so cliche, but it's so true. We really don't know that much about the brain. And I see so much potential in finding opportunities to find different ideas, backgrounds, like what is consciousness, or like why do certain, like, what is placebo effect? Like, why do humans have placebo effect? Things like that. Like certain questions like these kind of influenced me into neuroscience. And I think the brain is so cool. It sounds so lame saying that, but I mean, at the end of the day, it really is so cool. It's just a mystery box in our head that delegates everything that we do. So from there, actually, right before I had started university, so the summer after graduating high school, I actually went to go visit a neuroscience lab at my campus. And I got to see the lab and got to meet some of the undergrads who were working in that lab. And that was also like my first exposure into a neuroscience lab. And I was like, this is really cool. And the person I got to work with, his name is Dr. Freed. He's also a great mentor of mine. He's a cool neuroscientist, and he's a great science communicator. And so he's been a great influence on me as well in going into neuroscience. That's something I do also recommend, finding people who can guide you and lead you. Mentors are great in every aspect, whether that is in science or just in life, like life mentors. I really would not have been where I am without my mentors who continuously guided me. Otherwise, I probably would have been like a child at a candy store, just kind of like wandering around, like, oh, this is cool, this is cool. But like my mentors helped guide me, guide my interests, and all of that. Now, why PhD? That's a great question as well, because as I said, I did consider med school. And I kind of quickly realized after really thinking about it that I don't really think I could handle seeing people like butchered, so to say. Like you have to do rotations in the ER and things like that. And like I don't think I'd actually have the stomach to see something like that. But I have the stomach to see, you know, like rats being dissected, mice being dissected, things like that. It's like lower scale for me. But to see like humans, I don't know. That's kind of where I was like, I don't know if I want to take this route. Another thing that pushed me into taking the graduate school career path is the fact that you get to ask a question that not many people are asking, and you get to do the research and you get to be that expert in that field. And something that really attracted me as well to graduate school is you're not only a student, but you're also an expert in your field all at the same time. It's like this weird combination that is like super cool. And it's like, you know, you could be an expert in your own field and you get to share that with people. And whereas like, for instance, physicians, a lot of the time what they're doing is they're practicing medicine, so they're treating patients. They don't get as much time to ask questions like, why is this happening? Even if you're a physician scientist, you still have to spend a specific amount of hours in the clinic. And so that kind of leaves out time to do research. So when I was like weighing these options out, I was like, I want to ask questions. And at the end of the day, I am indirectly and directly in some cases helping humanity out. What scientists do, the research that we're finding, no matter how big or small the research is, will impact how physicians treat their patients. And that's really at the end of the day what draws me into the PhD route.
I'm just going to keep rolling with the questions that we got from Anna, kind of related to like all of the different passions that you're talking about, why you want to do everything. On days when motivation is low or when like experiments don't work or whatever, how do you keep that upbeat attitude, or like how do you stay productive? Oh, I don't know where Georgia went. I think her Wi-Fi was cut out, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. Definitely have had those days. And I don't know, I think that's like where you kind of need your lab members, your lab mates. Like for instance, Monica, I've been working with you since May, and I haven't known you for that long, but you know, people like you push me into figuring out my problems and moving forward. And just sometimes being in a lab and just sitting in that lab, even when things aren't working out, you're seeing other people's projects aren't working out either. And having that, and you're like, that's okay. That's what science is. It's literally built on failure. That's also why I like it. I don't think it's like the perfectionist attitude. I'm like, it's okay to fail. Like sometimes failure does lead to certain findings we would have never expected. And that is rare, but it's a good mindset to have. Other things that kind of just get me through it is, I don't know, like talking to people. It's sometimes just stepping outside for a second and like going outside and going for a walk or something like that to refresh yourself, and then coming back to whatever you were having a problem with. Other times it's just like I like to listen to upbeat music that just keeps me going. So it's like, stuff like that helps me get through tough times.
I am very curious to hear now. Do you have any particular aspirations for your senior year? Are you like looking to be, I don't know, like maybe do something with your project, something specific, or like are you starting grad school applications? I want to hear all about that.
Yeah, so I am starting grad school applications. It's something I actually have been procrastinating. As I said, I do procrastinate. Yeah, starting grad school applications, it's super daunting because it's just like there's so many different schools out there. There's so many different programs that are out there. It's really hard to identify like, hey, I think I'd be a good fit here. Also, like another thing about like anyone who is getting ready to apply to grad schools, it's really important to find like somewhere you think you'll be happy, because at the end of the day, like that is where I want to be, somewhere where I am happy. Not only obviously doing good research, but a happy worker is gonna make, is gonna have a better time, is gonna be able to produce better outcomes. So I'm really hoping that, like wherever I do end up, I end up somewhere that I will be happy. So it's kind of been stressful because it's like, some schools are super competitive and you're like, I don't know, would I be able to fit there? What is the environment like? There's a lot of like, let me just be honest, there's a lot of self-doubt. But that's why you gotta have a buddy who's also applying to grad school. So Georgia and Monica, I know you both are applying too, so we'll struggle together. Something I'm looking forward to my senior year is hopefully having a good honors thesis. That's something that, I'm really hoping that turns out well. Other than that, I'm just really hoping, because we are going back on campus. I'm hoping that it'll be like a nice, safe year. I don't want to have to go back into quarantine with the Delta variant that's on the continuous rise. I'm like a little hesitant that that's going to impact, again, our school and our learning environments and everything like that. We'd have to make that shift again. So really all I'm hoping is that it'll be a good senior year and I can peacefully leave out.
Malaika, you literally are so driven, so curious, so passionate, and those are like absolutely essentials if you want to be a scientist, but they are especially great qualities to have as a human too. And like with all of your past projects, it goes to show that you are so curious, so motivated to pursue science, and that's one of the biggest things I think a scientist should always have. So I'm absolutely super duper happy for you. I think you're gonna do great things in the future, and I'm sure we all do. But I would like to wish you the absolute best for this next senior year, grad school applications, and I really thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here with us today. It was so much fun again. So pleasing to like hear your perspective on science and projects and how to tackle hard aspects of being a researcher. So thank you so much, really, so much for being here with us today. I would like to wish you and all the listeners a big reminder, which is you've got potential.
Yes.